The valley was silent. Thousands of soldiers stood ready for war, yet no one moved. On one hillside waited the army of Israel. Across the valley stood the Philistines, armed for battle. Between them stretched the dry ground of Elah, a place that would soon become the stage for one of the most unforgettable confrontations in history. Then the earth seemed to tremble beneath the footsteps of a single man. He emerged from the Philistine lines, wearing bronze armor that flashed beneath the morning sun. A massive spear rested across his shoulder. A shield-bearer walked ahead of him, but even the shield seemed small beside the warrior it was meant to protect. His name was Goliath. For 40 days, he had walked into the valley and challenged Israel. For 40 days, Israel had listened. And for 40 days, no one had dared to answer. King Saul was afraid. His strongest warriors were afraid. Every soldier who saw the giant retreated. But on this day, someone different had arrived at the camp. He was not a seasoned warrior. He carried no sword. He wore no armor. He was only a young shepherd carrying bread for his brothers. Before the sun set, this shepherd would stand alone before the giant. One stone would leave his sling. One impossible victory would change the future of Israel, and the world would remember the name David. What do you do when the enemy standing before you appears larger than anything you have ever faced? What happens when everyone around you says the battle cannot be won? Goliath possessed greater size, stronger armor, better weapons, and decades of combat experience. David possessed none of those things. Yet David saw something that every frightened soldier had forgotten. Goliath was not merely challenging an army, he was defying the living God. David did not enter the valley because he believed he was stronger than the giant. He entered because he believed the giant was not stronger than God. This is not simply the story of a boy who defeated a warrior. It is the story of fear confronting faith. It is the story of a nation paralyzed by what it could see, and one shepherd strengthened by what he knew. It is the story of how God can use the person everyone overlooks, the weapon no one respects, and the moment no one expects. This is the story of David and Goliath. Generations had passed since God first called Abraham to leave his homeland and walk toward an unknown country. God promised Abraham that his descendants would become a great nation. Through Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 tribes of Israel, that promise continued.
The Israelites eventually entered Egypt, where they became slaves under Pharaoh. But God raised Moses to lead them out of bondage. He opened the Red Sea, guided them through the wilderness, and brought them toward the land he had promised. After the time of Moses and Joshua, Israel was led by judges. Again and again, the people turned away from God, suffered under their enemies, cried out for help, and were rescued. Eventually, Israel demanded a king like the surrounding nations. God allowed Saul, a tall and impressive warrior from the tribe of Benjamin, to become Israel's first king. At first, Saul appeared to be everything the people wanted. He looked powerful, commanded armies, and stood taller than nearly every man in Israel. But Saul repeatedly disobeyed God. The prophet Samuel declared that Saul's kingdom would not endure. God would choose another man, a man after his own heart. Samuel was sent to the house of Jesse in Bethlehem. Jesse presented his older, stronger sons, but God rejected each of them. The Lord reminded Samuel that human beings look at outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. Finally, Jesse called his youngest son from the fields. David entered smelling of sheep and open country. He was young, overlooked, and inexperienced, yet God had chosen him. Samuel anointed David with oil in the presence of his brothers, and from that day the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. David did not immediately become king. He returned to the sheep. But while Israel saw only a shepherd, God was preparing a warrior, a leader, and the future king of his people. Long before David sat upon a throne, He learned to lead among the hills of Bethlehem. He watched his father's sheep beneath the heat of the sun and through the darkness of night. He searched for those that wandered away. He carried the weak. He defended the flock from predators. There were no crowds to praise him. There were no soldiers to follow him. There was no royal palace. There was only the shepherd, the sheep, and God. Those lonely fields became David's training ground. There he learned patience. There he learned courage. There he learned that responsibility could not be abandoned when danger appeared. There he learned to trust God when no one else was watching. David also became skilled with music. He played the harp, worshiped God, and developed the words and melodies that would later become songs for generations. When an evil spirit troubled King Saul, David was brought into the royal court to play music.
Saul found relief when David played, and he came to appreciate the young shepherd. Yet David continued moving between Saul's court and his father's flock. He was close enough to see the throne, but he did not attempt to seize it. He had been anointed, but he waited. The kingdom would come in God's time. Before David could wear a crown, however, he would first face a giant. The Philistines had long been enemies of Israel. They occupied strong cities along the coastal plain and possessed powerful military forces. Their armies repeatedly pressed into Israelite territory, threatening villages, farmland, and trade routes. A new confrontation began when the Philistines gathered their troops near Soko in Judah. They camped between Soko and Azekah, near a place called Ephes Dammim. King Saul responded by assembling the men of Israel. The Israelite army camped in the valley of Elah and arranged itself for battle. The geography created a tense standoff. The Philistines occupied one hill. Israel occupied the hill opposite them. The valley lay between the two forces. Each army could see the other. Soldiers heard the distant sounds of shields, swords, and shouted commands. They knew that once one side descended into the valley, it would become vulnerable while climbing toward the enemy position. Neither army rushed forward. Then the Philistines introduced a different kind of battle. From their camp came a champion named Goliath. He was from Gath, one of the great Philistine cities. Gath was associated with unusually powerful warriors, and Goliath stood above them all. He was enormous. The biblical account describes him as towering over ordinary men. His body was protected by a bronze helmet and a coat of scale armor weighing thousands of shekels. Bronze armor covered his legs, and a bronze javelin was slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was compared to a weaver's beam, thick, heavy, and designed for devastating force. The iron point alone weighed hundreds of shekels. Even before Goliath reached his opponent, a shield-bearer walked ahead of him. Everything about Goliath was intended to create fear. His height, his armor, his weapons, his experience, his confidence. He walked down into the valley and shouted toward Israel, "Why have you come out and lined up for battle?" His voice carried across the open ground. "Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul?" He reduced the entire conflict to a single challenge. "Choose a man and have him come down to me."
If the Israelite warrior could defeat Goliath, the Philistines promised to become Israel's servants. But if Goliath defeated Israel's champion, Israel would serve the Philistines. Then Goliath shouted the words that cut most deeply. "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." No one answered. The soldiers of Israel stared across the valley. They saw the bronze armor. They saw the spear. They saw a warrior who appeared almost impossible to defeat. King Saul heard the challenge. Saul was taller than the other Israelites. He was the king. He possessed armor, weapons, and combat experience. By every human expectation, Saul should have been the one to represent his people. But Saul was afraid. When the king was afraid, the army followed his example. The soldiers retreated. Goliath returned to the Philistine camp without facing an opponent. The next morning, he came again. He shouted the same challenge. Again, Israel remained silent. That evening, he returned. Again, no one answered. Morning and evening, day after day, the giant walked into the valley and humiliated the army of Israel. One day became 2, 2 became 10, 10 became 20. Still no champion came. For 40 days, Goliath continued his challenge. Fear settled over the Israelite camp. At first, the soldiers may have hoped that someone else would volunteer. Then, as the days passed, the giant's apparent invincibility only grew. Every unanswered challenge made him seem stronger. Every retreat made Israel feel weaker. The battle had not yet begun, but Goliath was already winning inside their minds. Far from the valley, Jesse lived in Bethlehem with his family. Jesse was an old man and had 8 sons. His 3 oldest sons, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah, had followed Saul into the war. David was the youngest. While his brothers stood in the army, David cared for his father's sheep. He was aware of the conflict, but he did not yet know what was happening in the valley of Elah. One morning, Jesse prepared supplies. He gave David roasted grain and loaves of bread to take to his brothers. He also sent cheese for their commander. Jesse wanted David to learn how his sons were doing and return with assurance that they were safe. David did not delay. Early the next morning, he entrusted the sheep to another keeper, gathered the supplies, and began the journey. The road from Bethlehem carried him through the hills toward the Israelite camp. As David approached, the army was moving out to its battle positions. The soldiers shouted their war cry. For a moment, the camp may have appeared courageous. Weapons were lifted, ranks were formed, and men prepared as though battle would finally begin. David quickly left the supplies with the keeper of the baggage and ran toward the battle line. He found his brothers and greeted them. While David was speaking with them, movement appeared among the Philistines. Goliath emerged again. The giant walked forward with the same confidence he had shown for 40 days. He repeated his challenge. This time, David heard every word. He heard Goliath insult Israel. He heard him mock the army. Most importantly, David understood that Goliath was defying the living God. Around David, the Israelite soldiers reacted as they had reacted every day. They turned and fled from the giant in great fear. David watched them retreat. He may have expected someone to stand his ground. No one did. The soldiers began discussing the reward King Saul had promised to the man who defeated Goliath. The king would give him great wealth. He would allow the man to marry his daughter. His family would be exempted from taxes and obligations in Israel. These rewards demonstrated Saul's desperation. Yet even wealth, royal marriage, and family privilege were not enough to convince a soldier to face the Philistine. David began asking questions. What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Then he asked the question that revealed the difference between his perspective and theirs. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? The soldiers saw a giant. David saw a man who stood outside God's covenant. The soldiers compared Goliath to themselves. David compared Goliath to God. To the army, the battle was between one man and another. To David, the battle concerned the honor of the Lord. The soldiers repeated Saul's promised reward. As David continued speaking, his oldest brother Eliab heard him. Eliab became angry. Perhaps he remembered the day Samuel had come to Bethlehem. Eliab had appeared strong and impressive, but God had not chosen him. Instead, Samuel had anointed David, the youngest brother. Now David was questioning soldiers at the battlefield. Eliab accused him. "Why have you come down here?" He demanded to know with whom David had left the few sheep in the wilderness. Then he attacked David's motives. "I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle." The accusation was unfair. David had not abandoned the sheep. He had entrusted them to a keeper. He had come because his father had sent him. He carried food for his brothers and their commander. But David did not allow his brother's anger to silence him. "What have I done now?" David replied. "Can I not even speak?" He turned away and continued asking about the challenge. David's words spread through the camp. Soldiers repeated what the young shepherd had said. Eventually, the report reached King Saul. A young man was speaking as though Goliath could be defeated. Saul ordered that David be brought before him. David entered the presence of the king. He may have looked very different from the champion Saul had hoped to find. David was young. He wore no armor. He had no rank within the army. He had not spent decades training for warfare. Yet David spoke with a confidence that had disappeared from the entire camp. "Let no one lose heart because of this Philistine," David said. "Your servant will go and fight him." Saul looked at him and saw only his youth. "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him," Saul replied. "You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." From a human perspective, Saul's conclusion was reasonable. Goliath had been trained for combat since childhood. David had been caring for sheep. Goliath wore armor strong enough to resist swords and spears. David had arrived carrying food. Goliath was the champion of the Philistines. David was not even a soldier. But Saul did not know everything about David's life. David began to tell him about the fields of Bethlehem. "When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it." David did not run away when predators attacked. He pursued them. He struck them and rescued the sheep from their mouths. If the animal turned against him, David seized it, struck it, and killed it. The quiet hills had contained battles no one else had witnessed. There had been no audience. There had been no promised reward. David had fought because the sheep had been entrusted to him. He had risked his life for animals that belonged to his father. Now the people of Israel, God's covenant nation, were being threatened. David would not remain silent. "Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear," David said. "This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God." David did not claim that he had survived because of his own strength. He identified the true source of his confidence.
"The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." David remembered what God had already done. His present courage was built upon past deliverance. The soldiers had spent 40 days listening to Goliath. David had spent years learning to trust God. Saul finally agreed. "Go," he said, "and the Lord be with you." The king attempted to prepare David in the only way he understood. Saul placed his own tunic upon David. He dressed him in armor and placed a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened Saul's sword over the armor and attempted to walk. But the equipment was unfamiliar. It did not belong to him. David had not trained in it. The armor that was meant to protect him became a burden. "I cannot go in these," David said, "because I am not used to them." He removed Saul's armor. David would not attempt to become a smaller version of Saul. He would go as the person God had prepared him to be. He took his shepherd's staff. He carried his sling. Then David approached a stream and knelt beside the water. He selected 5 smooth stones. Each stone was shaped by years of moving water, making it suitable for a sling. David placed them into his shepherd's bag. A sling in the hands of a skilled ancient shepherd was not a child's toy. It could launch a stone with enormous speed and deadly accuracy. David had practiced in the fields. He knew the weight of the stones. He knew the rhythm of the sling. He knew how to release it toward a target. What appeared insignificant to the soldiers was a weapon David understood. David then began walking toward the Philistine. Across the valley, Goliath saw someone approaching. At first, he may have assumed that Israel had finally sent a warrior. But as David came closer, the giant saw his youth. He saw no armor. He saw no sword. He saw only a young shepherd holding a staff. Goliath looked David over and despised him. "Am I a dog?" Goliath shouted, "that you come at me with sticks?" To Goliath, the choice of David was an insult. He cursed David by the names of his gods. Then the giant threatened him. "Come here, and I will give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals."